So this is SIG Network Policy API Subproject meeting. Today is February 22nd, 2021. This is an official community meeting, and we have a code of conduct. So that basically is be nice with each other. Don't be a jerk with anyone. And let's get started with this. So yeah, we have our agenda for today. And oh, hold on. Yeah. So we have three items in the agenda. The first one is layer 7 policies. That wasn't a past issue from Thomas Graf, and we have added that again. I can't remember if it was me or Jay. Then we can move forward to make some issue triage in the network policy issues, and then Matt asked some time to make some other additions about Cyclonus. But yeah, so I guess we can start actually doing the issue triage and maybe having something like 15 minutes or so, if everybody's okay with that, because I think we have a lot of good user stories about that. So I didn't open anything, so sorry, folks. Okay, so JM.
Yeah, so the idea of this was we were just like looking at how many issues there were open, the overall network policy related issues, and we were talking about it. We're just like, I guess the best thing to do is to just start triaging these every week in the policy subgroup, because I feel like, in addition to breaking things and creating new ideas and APIs and stuff, we should be probably carrying our weight in terms of making sure that the broader SIG does not have any extra clerical work to do with regard to like stupid issues that we forgot to, not stupid, but like issues that are like easy for us to fix, but just requires a little bit of process, right? So if we did this every 15 minutes, is everybody okay with that? I'm assuming folks are okay with that. I'm assuming folks are willing to chop wood with us and carry water. So, but yeah.
So I'm going to start from the last one and move from the first one and move to the last one, like the oldest one. So the first one is, let me close the other one here. Yeah, so ambiguity about network policy, E2E test case should allow egress access on unnamed port. Description of network policy spec egress to ports are ambiguous. I think we should explain this question. What does port 780 means?
Oh, that's a tricky one, because those serve ports are, what is it? There's like some secret thing, right? It's like like named ports have a secret thing in them where if you do serve 80, then that AGN host container like serves on port 80 or something. I forgot, right? It's like a special named port.
You can if you can assign this to me if you want.
Okay.
I don't know. I can follow up on it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Okay. So the next one. Oh, okay. This already have a pull request, was one that team asked us to improve in the network policy test.
I'm adding the notes here of who's doing. So Matt's going to take 99256.
Yeah.
Matt, we can make red highlights in this now. It's like we do at home. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so this one, kubectl get any resources is very slow due to custom external metrics. I don't think this is related to network policy, but probably they just have like a network policy. I don't know why this is here.
I don't even think it's SIG network related. Yeah.
Yeah, it isn't.
I guess we should probably can we filter this to only include stuff that's labeled SIG network?
Yeah. I'm really good at
You're good
GitHub
at that
filters. Yeah,
search filtered thing, man.
yeah. So this one is from Sean from Tigera. Node local DNS. I don't think this is also related to network policy things at all. It's mostly related to DNS contract. I think a similar issue with network policy was reported with node local DNS as we documented here.
This looks like it's got a lot of people. I assume they don't need our help on this, right? Or do they?
Yeah.
Network policy and DNS connectivity. I don't know. Maybe they do. Given that node local DNS behavior depends on allowing untracked connections. I wish Matt hadn't signed up for the other one because I would have asked him to do this because he's worked on node local DNS and network policy stuff. But is somebody assigned this? No?
Yeah, we have Sean, Tim, and Pramesh.
I mean, those three can figure this out. Those are
Yeah.
you got a chair of SIG network. We've got the person who did node local DNS, and we've got a senior engineer at Calico. So
This,
I'm sure they can. Yeah.
This one is one from UJ. Windows and Linux differentiated
Yeah,
support
that's-
for network.
Yeah, I mean I've got all that working. I just need to clean up the PR.
Okay, so we can skip this one, right?
Yeah, that, or I know Ameem is here. Ameem, do you want to finish that 97751? If not, I can. It's totally optional. It's an easy PR. It's just cleaning that code up, but I'm totally happy to get another PR cleaned up today because I have another one this week. But if you're totally free, I'm happy to let you do it if you want. Whatever.
I can finish this. I just need access to a Windows cluster because you cannot run this CI.
Do you want to? I can give you access to one if you just want to hack the code up to so that you think theoretically it works. I can do all the testing. How about that?
Yeah, we can try.
Yeah, go ahead and just ping me, and
Okay.
So you want to just assign that to a meme, actually, Ricardo?
Yeah.
The last one, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
That's good. 977. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So the next one is Amim is doing some increase about network policy E2E tests.
7 out of 8 done.
Yeah.
The only missing part is this one that Jay just raised it, the Windows part.
Oh, great.
Are
Okay.
done, so
Cool. So we can
let's
tackle it.
close this issue.
Let's move
Okay.
forward. Container lifecycle hook node conformance test might be flaky. This is one from UJ.
Nice.
That's before Christmas.
Container hook. You could go ahead, you could. I think you can close it probably.
Yeah. So I will assign that to you, and you will. Sounds good. Or do you want me to close this?
Doesn't disappear. I suspect that something makes. Nobody else seems to care. This has been a long time. Let's just close it. Just close it.
Okay. Revise layer 3 and layer 7 test tags so they are easy to filter.
This is not a network policy issue. This is an
Okay.
overall. Yeah.
Okay, this one from Dan Winship, there is someone dealing with this, but that's a cleanup CTP test. So that's yeah, we should probably just take a look into that later.
The hardest thing with SCTP tests is to know who really cares about this as a feature. Like somebody must use this and care about it.
I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, I feel like at some point we've got to figure that out.
Yeah. I'm gonna leave this one for probably the next one.
Yeah.
So this one, Kubernetes deletes the pod before cleaning. I don't think this is a network policy one. It's a CNI thing. Let's just network policy. Okay. So there is some comment from Dan Williams, but yeah, I guess it's this one is moving on.
I guess it's just he's just talking about the ordering of
Yeah, of
how
things.
they're managed.
So this one is the one that you are dealing with. Network policy namespace selector should all match against name. I will assign that to you, Jay. This is the
Sure.
feature that you are dealing with.
Yeah.
Assign Jay. Okay. Hopefully we can reach the features, the new features.
Yeah.
Network policy admin defined bounds. This is with Abhishek, I think, right? I've assigned it to you. Yeah.
Abhishek is assigned that? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Abhishek,
So
you that? Okay.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Jay.
Abhishek, are you babysitting that? I can
He's
ask him offline. All right. Cool.
okay.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna skip this one and leave this open to the next topic. Okay. Great. So this one, storage upgrade mechanism, I don't think it's a, oh, damn it. Policy. Okay, and it starts update to remove the deprecated. Okay, this is the migration from V1 beta 1 deprecated network policy. I guess this is done. Node selector for ingress egress rules. So this is the request for the node selector network policy. And this is assigned to Chris, but I can't remember if we have anything other than this as a user story, and if someone wants to tackle this one.
Yeah, Ricardo, I can take it.
Okay. So assign Satish.
node selector for Satish, are you working on that?
Not yet, but yeah, I would be happy to chime in here.
Okay. So
Like, if there anyone like who is willing to take it, yeah, I'm okay to give up, but yeah.
Satish, can you send me your GitHub handler so I can insert here?
Yeah, I think it was showing up earlier, right? I think SK MATTI. Yeah, that's it.
This one. Okay. Okay. Only Kubernetes comment. Okay, you need to comment this one. You can assign that to yourself. Okay. Satish.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So update network policy E2E test for V1 API semantics. Do we have something else here, Jay?
this is new. Oh gosh.
No, this is old actually.
Yeah.
It's a 4 years old. And you are assigned to this one.
I bet we can close it. Let's go ahead and scroll down and see what's going on. Oh, he just asked, did these get added to the new tests?
Yeah, we need to move this one. This is the I'm missing one.
What? What's
Network policy port with protocol, but not port means any port with that protocol.
Oh, okay. So we have one more thing to do here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna assign to you also, okay? Yeah.
And can you mention that we have one more to do there, Ricardo, while you're in there?
I'm sorry, Jay? What?
Can you mention that we have one last test? We still have one to do, and down to. Are you okay doing that, or you want us to find someone else to do it?
No, do it.
Okay. Who's on it? All right, great.
Okay. And yeah, so would like cluster cider to be fetchable by pods. What is this like? I don't think this is.
It's not a policy at all.
Network policy specific terms.
Not only is this, I don't think, possible really in a reasonable way, but it's not really.
Okay, stop serving extensions V1 beta 1. This is like a bigger one. I don't think it's with us. Also, we are already serving in this group, right? Requirements for affinity to graduate to beta. This is not SIG network also. I thought I was like filtering. Yeah. And support port ranges and services. This is actually not related to network policy, but they have they say that, okay, you already support that on network policies, so why not supporting these on services? I was going to take a look into that, but there is like a bunch of discussion about this. You also commented this one, Jay. So yeah, about vars.
Oh
So I
yeah,
guess
this is
we
that
can take a look. Yeah.
Docker links thing, and I made a PR to clean it up, and then I think they said that the PR, we shouldn't do the stuff in the PR, even though it was kind of the right thing to do. So then I think I had like a long comment, I think, to explain, but I don't think we can do this in the end, right? Can we?
I don't know. I think we should probably like raise this one in the next SIG network meeting, like 5 minutes. Folks, what we want to do, are we going to move forward with this one? Otherwise we should like close, because we have a lot of things to figure out about this one, right?
All right, this
So
is
instead of keeping this open, why don't we decide if we want to move forward or just close this?
yeah, I'm adding it to the agenda, Ricardo, for SIG network right now.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, so this is all for the triage. We finished everything here. There was also the log one. I don't know why it isn't here, but I added that check anyway, so it's probably it's missing like the label or something. Okay. Oh, it's here. I guess that this filter is not working, Jay. Okay, we can do that later. So the next item in the agenda is about this proposal. There has been some discussion about extending network policy to layer 7. This was raised by Thomas Graf from Isovalent, from the Cilium, because actually they do support having layer 7 things inside their network policy, and I guess that Calico nowadays also support this with a CRD. So the main discussion about this is if we could have something inside the network policy object that could support not only filtering by IPs and ports and like IP selector based on pod labels, but also something like, okay, I don't want to allow my users to make a get request against my service, only a post request, or like I don't want them to post messages in this Kafka topic, but only on the other one. And yeah, so this should probably have become a cap or something like that, but I guess there is some more discussion about this, because Thomas is proposing here like layer 7 port rules and something like that inside the network policy. But the main discussion was something like Dan Winship saying about how much is this inside the network policy scope, right? So this, as we call this, a network policy and not like an application policy or a layer 7 policy, how much is this inside the scope? And yeah, so I will not pass through all of the comments. I recommend you folks to read this, but the last one that we got was me asking about if we should reopen this and make this viable. And Antonio actually asked if this is something more related to the service API group or with the network policy, or like the policy API group, right? So I want to listen to you folks about your opinions about that. The service API folks, they didn't answer. My opinion is that this is slightly related with the service API, but on the other side, I like, if I want to create an egress policy and do not allow my users to make any sort of post against a specific vhost, but only a get, this wouldn't, like, work, or this wouldn't be part of the service API thing. And also I wanna listen you about the effort of this one. My thought is that this needs to be like a different, a complete different object, separated from the network policy.
I think it kind of depends on who's going to be working on it and who's going to be driving it, right? Like, I feel like there's just a lot of ways to attack this problem. And I, I keep forgetting, wasn't there, didn't we have someone working on L7 policies?
I don't think so, Jay. Let me check.
Maybe not. Okay.
Somebody brought him up a couple weeks ago.
Somebody brought him up, I felt like. So I feel like, this is one of those weird ones that it's like, well, we could, Ricardo, we could collect feedback all day, but it's like,
Yeah.
does somebody care enough to actually do the work of actually solving this problem? Because it's just going to be a lot of work to figure out some way to do this. And there's a 50% chance that even if you do all that work, it's not going to be accepted. So I don't know if anybody cares enough to actually work on this. So what do we do in that scenario? Unless it's you.
I guess I have just reopened the issue because Thomas was complaining about this in Twitter, and like
Yeah.
no one was taking a look into that.
But Thomas, I don't think Thomas came to the last meeting we asked him.
Yeah, no, I can't remember if it was me, Jay, to be honest, that added this to the meeting notes, or if it was Andrew, or if it was like Vinay. I know it's here, but I can't remember if this was like something from Google user stories that he brought to the network policy meeting.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I feel like this is like a
honestly, I can't
lingering one.
remember.
I don't think it's worth having an issue open about it, but that's just my opinion. I mean, but I'm totally open to keeping it open too. It's just, I think we're just going to keep getting we're going to keep getting new opinions that are kind of the same, really. You know what I mean? Over and over again at this point.
Yeah.
We've kind of beat it to a dead horse, right? Like somebody wants to do it or not, basically.
I think when I brought it up a couple of weeks ago,
Okay.
I mentioned that if I probably like to work on this, but towards the later half of the year. So until then, if somebody picks it up, great, I'll help them. If not, then I'll maybe 6 months down the line.
Yeah. Up to you, Ricardo, whatever you want to do with it. I almost feel like we should close it at this point and just let it come back up later. But
I think that if this is like something we are thinking about coming back later, we could keep like this open and with like lifecycle frozen or
okay, yeah.
that. And we can, like, as Abhishek said, we could probably bring this up again on the second semester of 2021.
Yep. Whatever you want to do. This issue is
I am completely
this issue is totally dead to me because nobody's working on it. So don't care what you do with it. Whatever, just do something with it.
I am completely with low bandwidth to take a look into those ones. So yeah, I will say that we are going to keep this open and with lifecycle frozen, and we are going to discuss this again in the second semester, in the third quarter of this year.
Gonna life cycle thaw it, right?
Yeah.
6 months from now.
Yeah. Okay. So the last one is that we have in the agenda for today is the Cyclonus presentation by Matt. Matt, I'm gonna allow you to share your screen.
Oh, I didn't want to present anything unless somebody really had like a burning desire. Just we kind of ran out of time last time, and I didn't really, tell everybody my main point. So the reason why I wanted to show everybody that Cyclonus stuff was because I think there's a couple of ways that it could be applied to, the network policy API stuff that we're looking at. Building, maybe it's a really cheap way to build something that you can actually like get your hands on and, and generate some data with that shows what network policy additions to the API would do, you know, to help you kind of like see the effects of any changes that you're thinking about, to see what those would look like without actually having to have somebody go into a CNI and implement those changes or something like that. So kind of that modeling aspect, and then also, you know, being able to put like concrete data in front of other people and say, you know, like, this is the change that I'm proposing, you know, like this is the effect that we're going to see. So if anybody is, you know, is kind of interested in that aspect of Cyclonus, you know, I'd be happy to collaborate with anybody on that kind of stuff, you know, and see how we can make it useful for you. But yeah, there's also a bunch of other stuff that it does as well. And if that's interesting to anybody else, then, you know, I'm super happy to collaborate on that stuff as well.
What is there any chance that this could get used? I know Antrea has some utilities in it that do this kind of stuff. Abhishek, is there any obvious tactical way that we would be able to use Cyclonus or not? Or is it just redundant, or is it
I think from what I saw last week, Cyclonus has a few more things than what we have. I think in our tool we have a explainer or a querier tool which shows some policies appended to the or applied onto the pod endpoints. But I think Cyclonus does a little more than that. And I believe, Matt, you're already trying to do something with it. You know, you've already ported some of the CI or the testing framework of Cyclonus into Antrea. And if you want to add a little more to that and you want to evolve with that, I'll be happy to do that. We'll be happy to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. We just got like a POC up for Antrea, but it's not doing, I think, as much valuable stuff as it could. So yeah, definitely looking forward to improving that.
There's also there's some Octant stuff that uses Antrea under the hood. I wonder whether that visualization might get plumbed into Octant, which is another open source Kubernetes tool that's out there. So I feel like there's a lot of ecosystem projects kind of there's a lot of ecosystem, and then the question is, where does it intersect with what we're doing? I guess, you know, there's always been this talk of building a command line client for network policies, and I think it became more relevant last time in SIG network because people were talking about, what were we talking about that made this come up? Was it was the node stuff that you all were doing, right? It was the idea that if you have a administrative policy, it's going to get really hard to unravel what the policies are doing and what the net policy is. So then that's why this suddenly had a very clear upstream like user story.
So I think when we introduced cluster network policy on top of Kubernetes network policies, the combination of that, a tool to help explain the interaction and the overall policy that those are applied on the pod will definitely be helpful. I think that's how this conversation came about in upstream.
So should we work? What if you all think maybe we should work that into one of the? We should work that tool as one of the potential things in the KEP when we merge it as provisional, right? Like that we would build an upstream tool as part of the KEP that could be used to calculate the net policy, and that if that tool was considered useful, it could be a part of somehow integrated into Kubernetes itself. Do you think that would work? You think that would go over well?
I think it can be independent. It can be started off for Kubernetes network policy, which already exists today. So that way, that particular KEP doesn't have to wait for cluster network policy, which might be a lot of back and forth between people. So this can be an independent KEP in itself, and then maybe we can find a home for it within the Kubernetes repos, just to basically what Jay suggested. Maybe an upstream tool.
So Kubernetes SIGs. So you think we should propose it? And so if you were to propose it, would you propose it as like a library that other CNIs could use plus a command line tool? It seems to me like the way you would do it that way, Calico and Antria and anybody who wanted to build this into their CNI tooling could build it into it to them, but then also it could be a standalone tool.
Yeah. Anyways, this Maths tool is pretty CNI independent, so agnostic of it. So it doesn't have to be dependent on any CNI provider.
No, but the question is it something that we want people to be able to vendor and use as a library, or is it something that should just be a command line tool? You know what I mean? Because the way we pitch it as a Kubernetes SIGs repo is different, right? Like, is it a end user tool, or is it a library, or is it both?
I would look at it as an end user tool.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess that sounds like a potential endpoint. Matt, like, do you feel like that's a good direction to go in?
Yeah, that makes sense for me. And yeah, like I think the most important thing for me right now is to make sure that I'm doing stuff that's like useful for other people and not just like writing a bunch of code for myself. So definitely, yeah, I definitely appreciate the feedback in the direction.
Yeah. So I guess then, I guess, do you feel like it's, how long do you think until it's kind of feature complete in terms of the stuff that you think would be worth actually having a standalone repo for in the Kubernetes SIGs?
Yeah, that's a good, I don't feel like there's anything huge missing right now, but like, yeah, it's a tough question because I'm sure there's stuff that I just didn't think of.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's my answer. Nothing huge that I'm aware of, but at the same time, probably tons of stuff that other people are aware of that needs to be added.
Okay, cool.
I don't know if that's really a helpful answer though.
Yeah, I mean, I've never successfully proposed a Kubernetes SIGs project before, so I don't really know what the bar is. I just want to make sure that when we propose it, we have whatever the best possible story we could possibly have, or somewhere close to that, is what we propose, and not, hey, we have a bunch of code that Matt wrote that
Right.
does something cool. Can we add it? Because then it's going to be hard to frame.
Right.
Not like it's a super high bar, but I think the bar is clarity of knowing exactly what we're proposing. Right.
Why don't I come back to this in maybe 2 weeks with something a little bit more, a little bit more focused or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Like, let's see what we can do to think of I don't want to say user stories because those are mostly just fluff, but the thing that we're actually doing, right? You know what I mean? Whatever you want to call it,
Right.
The fundamental thing when I think of Cyclonus in my head, I think this is something that helps me reconcile connectivity between things when there's more than one network policy at play. Right. This is the thing that helps me reconcile that. So is there anything else in that? Is there anything other than that you would use Cyclonus for?
It's just a bunch of different applications of that, whether you're running a bunch of tests against Antrea and Cilium, which is what it's doing now, or you're explaining your network policies. It does all come from that one idea that you just mentioned, like taking those network policies and resolving them into something that you can apply to other stuff. So,
by the way, I just saw in how join. I think he's also pretty much interested in the work.
Oh yeah, hey, what's up? And how? Yeah, we caught up a couple weeks ago and we talked about that.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have people working on it with you? Do you need help working on it, or is it still something that you're mostly just doing by yourself, or what?
Yeah, doing it myself right now. I don't need help, but like if anybody wants to, definitely open to that. But yeah, like what? Yeah, like maybe I need to get this a little bit more clear in my head, and then I'll
There's
then
so many things we can do.
Right.
While you were discussing about Cyclonus, I was taking a look into the last issues, and I found two that I wanna bring up again. Do you mind, folks? As we have still 20 minutes.
Sure.
Okay, so have we finished the Cyclonus?
Yeah. Okay,
subject?
Matt,
Yeah.
just keep plugging away at it, and let's figure out how we can structure a good story around it.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Matt. So this is one that I brought up again, and Abhishek asked us to brought this again up. Abhishek, do you wanna discuss about this one, because you opened this issue and it wasn't like on our priorities, but I guess we can.
Yeah.
Do,
So this particular, we have been discussing within our cluster network policy team to include this as part of the cluster network policy proposal. I think Vinay and Satish who are on the call, we're also planning to come up with some sort of a proposal around this and see whether we can include this as part of cluster network policy. If not, if we think that it is becoming a big factor and something that will be distracting from the original scope, then maybe we'll spin it out as a separate cap. And I think it makes more sense for cluster scope policies because we have deny rules, or we at least plan to bring up deny rules. And using logging policy for Kubernetes network policy is probably not straightforward because I think Dan Winship brings up important use cases here, or important points here, why it is not suitable for Kubernetes network policy, but it certainly is for the administrative focused policies. So it's something that we plan to look at. Yeah, if not, then I think we'll open it up as a separate cap. If it becomes too complicated or complex by itself, we don't want it to take the attention away from the cluster network policy cap.
okay.
I don't know if Satish and Vinay have more to add on this.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you said, Abhishek. I think I think first and foremost, I think it makes sense to like combine the logging bits to the network policy if we can, and I think that will keep it unified in one place. And then there's only one controller, because if you keep it as the other option is to keep the network policy logging in a separate CR, and that would make it like now you got two places to like an update, like and what your intent is in terms of logging. So I'm for like adding logging policy to network. Now the issue about denies, like, because there's no deny rule for network policy, right? So when a connection gets rejected, then what do we attribute? So I think what we can do is it may not be possible to attribute the rules which for deny requests, but at least as part of the logging, if we can capture the file tuple, that may still be useful for folks, for customers. So again, bottom line, what I'm trying to say is network policy logging may not just be applicable to cluster network policy, which has denials, but also in some ways will also be useful for network policy spec. What does anyone else think? Does anyone have some comments on it?
Yeah, so instead of looking at it from a simple Boolean field, we are exploring like a policy kind of an option, a logging policy kind of a field, which can be a little more complex. So I think that's the general direction.
Yeah, so for all the allow rules, we can not only capture the flow that is being admitted, but we can also attribute that to the policy, right? Like, hey, this you're allowed because of this policy. But for deny, I think that becomes a challenge because we don't have a deny policy. Anything that is not part of the allow rules gets denied. So, but at least what we can do is we can capture the file tuples for the connection, so that if you're logging it, that at least gives us the customers the raw data that they can parse through using their own internal tools to see who is trying to access, if it's unauthorized, why is it coming from, and things like that. So I guess my bottom line is I think network policy logging would also be useful not only for cluster network, but also for network policy.
Yeah, I agree with Vinay as a user, because if there is no cluster network policy and I add a denial and I want to log what is hitting the denial, as a user, it would be like good to me, right? So if I am not working with the cluster scoped things.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the comment that I think Dan Winship is saying. So I'm not exactly sure what he's. Maybe I'm a little slow today. I'm not understanding what his concerns are in the second paragraph. Yeah.
I guess
I think
probably he's, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think what Dan was trying to say was that most users would want a cluster-wide option to either log all the packets or do not log all the packets. And he did not see a good reason why it should be done per policy or per rule. I think that's where I differed from Dan's viewpoint.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, because sometimes when you have lots of pods and nodes in a cluster, you may not be running privileged workloads in all the pods. So you're interested only in monitoring some secure workload that you're trying to monitor who's accessing and if it's under denial of service attack. And remember, logging is also going to cost. It has a storage cost. It has a CPU cost. It at least in we've seen like up to 20%, 30% additional CPU usage um, attributable to logging and their sustained loads. So there is some cost associated with it. So now if you use a hammer and say it's across a cluster, it may be when we have the ability to use a very targeted logging across only certain pods based on some selectors, then I think it would be advantageous to customers so that they don't have to pay in terms of CPU, memory, and storage.
Yeah,
Because I mean,
totally
this will add up very quickly, right? So.
This is a weird sound.
So just to add what when I was saying, I think so. Like probably a different, like tangential to what the discussion is happening on, right? I think we do want to add a description, right? Rule description, for like in network policy. So that might be also related because, I mean, not just the policy that is allowing a particular traffic, but the rule that is allowing the specific traffic. The traffic is also is useful, right? So probably I know that like Abhishek mentioned, there's some work on like adding unique identifier for a specific rule in the policy. So probably like we should take that into consideration as well, because when we provide the logs, we might as well want to provide the unique identifier that allowed or denied for cluster network policies.
Yeah, I agree. That's another one that we're looking at too, is to have the ability to uniquely identify a rule within a policy. Because for as Satish mentioned, for logging and maybe for statistics and monitoring and other purposes, you want to attribute certain stats to a rule. And today it's not possible within the Kubernetes network policy. So we would we would want to introduce rule identifiers within Kubernetes network policy, and certainly for cluster network policy. So I think that's another effort that we will try to tackle.
Okay, so Abhishek, what do you think about we can also do you want me to leave this one open and we can like bring this discussion again later? What do you expect from these folks? Because I'm lost
I,
like in the
yeah,
idea
I
of
think we should keep this open so that we have a because if we want to open up a cap, we have this issue which we can reference and then build a cap around it.
okay. So I'm gonna keep this open.
Okay, yeah. So just to add one more thing, so is it possible that so there's this discussion going on, right? Whether we want to enable cluster-wide logging or per network policy based logging. So would it make sense to have some kind of config map that says whether we want to enable like throughout the cluster, or like should we say that like decide based on the network policy options?
I think
Uh,
those config options most CNI providers do provide, uh, or at least they can provide. So we don't need a standard option within from Kubernetes. But certainly, if we introduce this field in network policy and cluster network policy, then users can, and I think it should then override whatever is the cluster config option. Because as a user, if I'm specifically writing a policy with logging enabled, I would want to see the traffic regardless of what the cluster option config option specifies.
yeah, that's debatable, right? So like in the cluster option, we say that enable logging at cluster level versus say something like delegate it to the individual resources. So I mean, like if the option is like in the delegate mode, like probably like at that point, like if you create a policy that has logging enabled, so it will be delegated to that particular one. Otherwise, it will be decided at the cluster level whether we're going to enable or like disable. Yeah, maybe that's something for like discussing in more detail. But yeah, so that's just wanted to see if that actually um, addresses like the like different perspectives like we're actually bringing in here.
Yeah, I think Dan was kind of mentioning that if you have like Calico or Antria or Cilium, they do provide a config option wherein we don't need any API changes. If the user wants to enable logging at the cluster level, they can just enable that option in their providers or in their config map, and then the different CNI providers will perform the logging. And I think that's what Dan was mentioning, and this is what is being done. So you don't need to change the API for that. But while I think when I also mentioned the reasons why we need to have individual policy level logging.
Got it. Yeah.
okay. So the last one I was taking a look was this one. Probably Jay, you are going to like this one. It's one from August 2017 that we should probably define empty network policy peer as known instead of any. So what do you think about this one, folks? Because I guess we should probably ping Tim Hawking and ask if this is something that he still wants to do this. Oh, you did already, Jay. Or if we should like increase the network policy API
And I
to
think
something
we
like
just,
a V2.
I think this is one we make a cap if we I mean, Tim has suggested it, so I don't think there's any. I think we have an automatic sponsor for this as a cap. So let me see. So it's defining empty from as none.
Just curious, like this was 4 years old. Like, has the ship already sailed on? Because this would be such a breaking change.
Yeah.
I guess this is the main problem, yeah. There
Yeah.
was some discussion, I guess was Satish on the network node selector or the service selector one, discussing about if we should have something like spec v2, right?
What is spec v2? Sorry.
Was something like having a peer v2 or something like that in your services selector cap, and like instead of increasing the version from the networking, like to the networking Kubernetes IO/v1, we to v2 we could keep like a v1 but have an additional field called spec2 that have a different behavior.
Okay, so
I guess you did this comment in some of your cap also.
so I was actually yeah. So it's not yeah, but like, I mean it's actually a field of spec. So instead of egress, was we going to have like egress to service or ingress to service? Uh, that's what I'm planning. Or yeah, you
Okay,
could actually point to the exact. Yeah.
yeah, egress to service, yeah, that was outside the spec, but I am wondering if this is something that we want to change from v1 to v2, because my guess is like this is important, at least like for a from a security perspective, this is quite important. So, but I don't think we should like be worried about like increasing the version of the network policy. So why not, instead of this, adding something like new spec or like policy spec that deprecates this, not actually deprecates the spec, but tells the CNI providers that the behavior from spec is different from policy spec, and they can support one or the other. I don't know if this makes sense. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, I like the idea of just overloading it. I don't know. I think that's what this folds into.
Yeah, I guess
I think the timing is a little off to work on this though, because I think we want the cluster scope stuff to settle, the dust to settle on that. Kind of like, when do we start working on V2? Right? We start doing that before or after the cluster scope stuff and the pizza stuff is done, right?
yeah, but my guess is like I can't even, okay, let me see if I prepare. Where can I open this thing? Yeah, come on. Okay, I'm gonna open a beast. My question is that like how viable is that we do something like this and say, okay, now a network policy has spec, but it also have a policy spec, and the policy spec behaves different from the spec because this is something like spec v2 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Increase the version inside this spec instead of like increasing the version of the network policy object. And we can say like that in spec v2, this is like a default deny instead of default allow. And we can say that the selectors.
I feel like it would be like, I've never seen a spec V2, but what if you just did a spec and then a V2 inside of spec?
I guess we are going to hit the same problem.
What's that?
The default open, the fail open.
But I think not. I think that would not be the case if you define inside spec.
Okay, so the idea was going to be something like policy spec and define
but
things here.
right though, you feel open, right?
Hmm?
So people go looking for. People are not going to know to look for policy specs, so that's why you fail open, right?
Yeah, I was
No,
wondering if. Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
sorry. So if there is no ingress or egress defined, so we will it will fail close, right? I mean, or am I missing something?
Okay, so because they are on the same level, right? Okay, I got it. Yeah.
Okay, so as long as we don't use, okay,
Yeah, if you don't specify anything for egress and ingress, so it will fail close. Is my understanding.
if you have a policy spec, but if you have both, it fails open.
Yeah, if we have both, like I mean, that is the expectation, right? We're gonna support the backward compatibility anyway. So if ingress is defined to allow something, then
If my
then
CNI provider is old, and I have old policy stuff that is valid, but my goal is for the new policy stuff to be processed. I have an open failure, right? So I mean, yeah, you're right. We still support the old stuff, but I guess the problem I think is that the new stuff won't be consumed by the old stuff. So if the new stuff is constraining connectivity in some new way, then that won't be obvious.
Yeah.
If you also have the old stuff in there.
I guess it depends on how we going to define our semantics when you have old and new stuff. So are we going to say that is it an intersection of both of those, or is it like an additive behavior?
Yeah. So I guess we are almost out of time, but I wish we could like discuss more about this one probably in the next meeting. Like, how can we propose an evolution of the spec from the network policy without increasing the network policy, or like if this is something desired, because we are not going to decide this thing by ourselves other than bringing this to SIG network folks. But I guess this is like we could probably have something easier to do, right? Other than like recreating all of the V1 network policy spec. I don't know even if we are supposed to do this, but what do you think, folks? We can try to discuss this better on the next meeting.
Yeah, I agree. Like I mean, at least one use case I can see here is like, so right now pod selector is a like mandatory field, and then like we can only select pods. But like if we were to support other resources, for example, service selector and stuff like that, so probably we might need a different spec. Yeah, that way, like I mean, like we don't have to break the backward compatibility and make the pod selector optional, because it was actually mandatory in the current spec, and we would want to make it optional because we have both pod and service selectors. But if you have a separate spec, probably that's where we want to start again from scratch.
Right? Yeah. So I'm gonna add this one to the next meeting, and if someone,
I feel like the right thing to do is a breaking change. That's what I feel like, but I don't. Yeah.
but we cannot break the V1 thing, Jay, unless we create a V2.
That's what I mean. Like, have a V2 policy that is totally only supported by V2 CNIs.
Okay.
I mean, anything else is just a mess, I think. But
We can also discuss about this like in the next meeting, like doing something like V2 versus news electrical spec. Sounds good.
Sure.
Okay. So we are out of time, folks. I'm gonna hit the stop button here, and yeah, thank you everybody for coming, and see you next week, next Monday. Bye, folks.
Yeah.